human beings are in a state of imbalance. And the imbalance is very much in the direction of overactivity, mentally and physically. And so, yeah, if you were to be practicing not moving your body, for a period of time with the idea that that's what you're trying to accomplish in the end is not moving your body, that's ridiculous, right? But that's not what it is. It's not a question of whether it's natural or unnatural. It's a question of where we start from is an unnatural condition where the mind is over-excited, over-agitated, the body is anxious, overactive, and so we're practicing sitting still as a way of bringing this back into balance. Nitsushimi Roshi, a Zen master, he speaks about this in terms of talking about the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. One of the nervous systems is designed to increase the energy in the body for fight or flight, right? The other system is the opposite, to bring the body into a state of calm. And almost all of humanity's systems are way out of balance in the direction of being overstimulated, fear-based, anxious, and so the brain is in a state of fight or flight all the time. Not in the most extreme state, in a less extreme state, but the less extreme state of fight or flight that the brain is in could be talked about in terms of saying a state of anxiety or a state of concern, a state of apprehension. If you really pay attention to your body and your mind, you'll begin to see that you're apprehensive all the time. You wake up in the morning, you open your eyes, and you're apprehensive, right? You're concerned about what's going to happen. You're concerned about what has happened. And this is a state of being excited in a way that has you be off balance. And so Nitsushimi Roshi said that to bring the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system into balance is a way of talking about what it's like to be in sahaja, which is a word that means the natural state, what it's like to be in a natural state, where you're in balance. The Buddha said that the state in which a person is enlightened, the state in which a person is living consistent with reality, he called it the middle way. Not too extreme in either direction, to find the middle way. And this is the same thing with meditation, as I mentioned before we started the practice today. To find the sweet spot when you're meditating means that if you begin to sit and you notice you're overexcited, agitated, anxious, restless, right? Then you're using the being still and the paying attention to the breath and the deepening of the breathing, which we know the deepening of the breathing helps the system to slow down, helps the overexcited system to start to relax, right? And so we're using the non-movement to bring the movement into balance. And then when we get it into balance, we need to notice when it's in balance, because when we get it into balance, if we don't stop there, it will continue to go down until you fall asleep. So when we get it into balance, then you have to notice when it's in balance and then stay awake. Stay relaxed, but stay awake. Find that balanced place, not just when you're meditating, but in your life, find that balanced place. So the practice that we speak of in terms of the meditation practice is a practice that needs to extend itself into your moving through life with an awareness of the body and the mind. And if you do that, you'll begin to notice that, for most people, you'll begin to notice that there is a constant state of apprehension and agitation and excitability and concern. So, for example, when we talk about the old situation of people when you're driving a car and somebody cuts you off, or you're in a hurry to get somewhere and you see ahead of you a line of traffic and you know that you're not going to get where you need to go. Right? And you get into this annoyance comes up, right? You get into this annoyed state, this angry state, right? And if you really pay attention, what you'll begin to notice is that that angry state is always there, it's just under the surface. It doesn't take much to stimulate it, right? So you could say that human beings, for the most part, are angry looking for a circumstance to express it. Most human beings are angry looking for a situation to express it. That's why it doesn't take much. When you touch that anger, it comes out very quickly because it's always there under the surface. Same thing with fear. Human beings are fearful looking for a situation to explain that. They're always afraid, right? So it doesn't take much to stimulate the fear, right? And so you have fear and you have anger, and when these two things are stimulated because they're already active, when these two things are stimulated, the person goes into an extreme fight or flight condition. We know, the brain scientists tell us that the amygdala is an area of the brain that monitors all incoming data, right, and determines whether what's happening is a threat. The thing that complicates it is the amygdala has been conditioned and trained to monitor what's a threat, not only to the physical body, but also to the person. Now, if you understand what we've been talking about here, one of the things that is the essential understanding of these teachings is that the person is a misunderstanding. The person doesn't actually exist. Therefore, any threat to something that doesn't actually exist, right, is a mistake. And people go through their day and through their life with an ongoing fear and apprehension about themselves as a person. And the person isn't real, but the brain doesn't know the difference. And so the amygdala reacts to any threat to the person. What's a threat to the person? Anything that comes into the experience of the person, anything that comes into the senses of the person that appears to indicate that the person is not okay. Anything that comes into the experience of the person that appears to indicate that the person is not okay. In other words, if somebody looks at you the wrong way, is enough. And take it from there, right? And so you go through the day apprehensive and fearful about losing the validity of your being a person, having the person be threatened. And so the amygdala in the brain doesn't know the difference between threats to the person and threats to the physical body. Therefore, as the brain scientists tell us, you are going through the day with a lot of the time being in the condition of what they call the amygdala hijack. The amygdala hijack. In other words, the amygdala is sensing threats to the person, not just the body. And so because it's sensing those threats, it's generating fight or flight behavior all the time. Therefore, a person who is inhibited, inhibition is a defense, is it not? A person who is inhibited, that's the amygdala telling the person to retreat, you know, to flight, right? To retreat. So you go through the day in this retreated position. In other words, you don't express yourself. You don't take any risk by saying anything to anybody, right? But you don't understand that this is what's going on. The brain will have you justify that. Oh, I'm just a quiet person. No, it's not just a quiet person. The brain is telling the system to stay in a retreat position so that you don't get hurt, okay? And so this is the cost of being out of balance. And when we practice meditation in a formal way, we're practicing being aware of the out of balanceness of the mind and the body. And we're using the breathing and we're using awareness to bring back a state of balance. And then as you go through the day, to be more aware and be more attentive, to notice the out of balanceness when you're driving your car, to notice the out of balanceness when you're around people who you're close to in your life, because they have the most potential to hurt you. Right? And so you're more likely around those people to be inhibited or defensive or take any minor thing that they say or do around you to be something that's meant to hurt you. So we're over fearful, over anxious, over concerned about life. And that's why in meditation, we're interested in bringing about a state of balance. And so this Zen master talked about it in terms of saying when the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system are in balance, then you're in a state of equanimity, you're in a state of being related to reality. Not even just related to reality, because in the ordinary way that people exist, in which people consider themselves to be a person that's separate from the world and separate from other people, right? That's a setup, right? That's a setup for fear, right? Because your survival is threatened because you're separated from people and separated from the world. In a state of balance, you're not only not separated from people and separated from the world, but you now are people and you are the world. There is no separation. And this experience of being whole, this experience of non-duality, this experience of no longer being apart from the world, but being the world. I am the world. I am other people. Allows you to experience the absence of threat. What can threaten me if I am everything? What can threaten me if I'm nothing? And the ultimate experience of reality is that I am everything and I am nothing. All there is consciousness. What is consciousness? Consciousness, as it says in the Heart Sutra, emptiness is form and form is emptiness. Consciousness, what you are, is everything that exists and nothing. There's nothing outside of that. There is nothing to be threatened by when that's the experience that's being had. And it's not an experience. It's not an experience, because in order for it to be an experience, there'd have to be an experiencer of the experience. So it's not even an experience. You just are that. I am that, as Nisargadatta said. I am that. I'm not in the world. I am the world. So, in answer to what you're saying, you could say it's an unnatural condition, but you're starting out in an unnatural condition and you're using another unnatural condition to bring that unnatural condition into balance. But you're actually going against what's natural and human to be out of balance. To be afraid all the time when there's no threat is to be out of balance and unnatural. Okay. The system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system operates on its own. It doesn't need the overactive programming that the brain drives it with, right? And so, yeah, it's natural to have this system for defending the body. It's natural, and the system does work to defend the body, right? The unnatural aspect of it is when the system is being used in defense of something that doesn't exist. That's the problem. And the majority of the overactive fight or flight behavior that occurs is a function of being defensive and aggressive, and a function of being in a survival mode about the person, not the body. You know, especially in the world we live in today, it's almost never the case that your body is actually being threatened. It's almost never the case that your body's being threatened. And yet people live in a state of being threatened. People live in a fearful state, in an anxious state, because they're identifying themselves as the person, and the person doesn't exist. So, you know, the thing about it is that you have to be willing to come to an understanding of what the situation is that we're dealing with here, that you're dealing with here, in order to get out of this neurotic condition. It's very important to understand that what we're talking about here is that the reality that most of humanity is living in is not reality. That's the problem. The reality that most of humanity is living in is not reality. The reality that most of humanity considers to be real is not real. That's why it's called the dream. The reality that most of humanity is living in terms of considering themselves to be a psychological construct and considering that psychological construct to be real and actual is a huge mistake. And it's the source of tremendous suffering. And if you come to see this, this is the first noble truth in Buddhism, that life is suffering. Right? The first noble truth in Buddhism is life is suffering. And the second noble truth is that the cause of suffering is desire. So what does that mean, right? Life is suffering. Well, life is suffering for most of human beings, and the cause of that suffering is desire. What's desire? Desire is wanting it to be other than it is. If you desire something, you want something you don't have, yes? Yeah. So human beings live a life in which moment to moment, the experience they're having is this is not it. The experience they're having is, I want something, I'm not sure what it is, but this isn't it. And then they go through this process of attempting to get what they think is it, and once you're in that condition, right, the salespeople show up. If this isn't it and you want something and what you want would be it, then somebody will show up and say, what you need is a new car, right? What you need is a facelift, right? What you need is a relationship. If you had a relationship that worked and somebody there all the time to love you, then you'd be happy, right? And the target keeps changing. Every time you get what you think it is that will make you happy, that's not it. That's one of the reasons that one of the things that I say here is, how long is it going to take you to get that the house is going to win this game? How long is it going to take you? It's like going to the casino. How long is it going to take you if you go to the casino and keep losing in the long run? How long is it going to take you to get the idea of what's going on there? Right? And if you do get the idea of what's going on, right, then you become open, then you become interested in the possibility that there is a way to win. There is a way to win, but the first thing you have to do in order to win is stop playing the game that you can't win. Stop investing your time and energy in things outside of yourself that appear to be able to produce what you want that will lend your desire. Because it's not outside of yourself. Maybe it's not a function of there being something that if you get that something that will result in your fulfillment or the end of the desire, right? Maybe the thing to do is look and see the condition that you start with. The condition that you start with. The condition that you start with is that who you are is not fulfilling, instead of attempting to get fulfilled by something outside of yourself. That who you are is not fulfilling. That who you are is lacking. You're in a state of lack. You're in a state of being incomplete and unstable. And then you attempt to complete yourself or become stable by finding something outside that appears to be outside of yourself in order to come to a stable position and experience fulfillment. And through these practices and teachings, what you come to find out is fulfillment is already there, but you first have to stop being ignorant. You first have to realize that you're not a personality, that what you are is already fulfilled, but you have been paying attention to everything but that. And when you begin to pay attention to that, you begin to discover the truth. You begin to discover, as it says in my favorite psalm, you begin to discover, my cup runneth over. That means I am fulfilled, right? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. What's the rod and staff? Right? What's the rod and staff? A staff is a straight up and down thing that you use to walk. A rod is a horizontal rod. If you put them together, what do they produce? The cross. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Where time and transcendence meet, comforts me. He createth me to lie down in green pastures. He createth me to sit by still waters. My cup runneth over. He prepareth the table before me. That's what's meant by no free will. That's what's meant by determinism. The table is prepared before you. It's already there. So when you begin to see things clearly for yourself, these Psalms and many of the things that are written in the Bible, like thy will be done, start to become clear because you're seeing what they're pointing to instead of just believing what it says. You're seeing what they're pointing to. And when you wake up, you see things as they are. That's what the word vipassana means, as it is. You see things as they are. You come out of the dream. You begin to see that you're not a personality. You begin to see that the world is not what you thought it was. It is not objective. It is not material. It is insubstantial. It's an appearance. And as you begin to come out of the dream and as you begin to be related to the truth, right, what seemed to be a problem solves itself. What seemed to be a problem solves itself. You don't have to seek happiness anymore, you're just happy. You don't have to be afraid anymore, you trust reality because you are that reality. You trust God because you are God. You trust life because you are life. And you begin to see that there's nothing you need to do. There's nothing you need to do. Once you know who you are what's happening. What do you need to do? You are what's happening. So what do you need to do? And therefore, you can appreciate and understand that if it is the case that there is no doer, there is no person, there is no personality, and there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you ever did do, there's nothing you ever will do, instead of being concerned about that because you think you need to be in control as a person, you begin to realize that you've been given the opportunity to relax. It's out of your hands. You can begin to experience that you've never done anything wrong. You've never done anything right. You've never done anything to be proud of. You've never done anything to feel guilty about. You can't do that in the present time, and you can't do that in the future. So there's nothing to worry about in the future, there's nothing to worry about now, and there's nothing to worry about in the past. That's the peace that passeth understanding. That's the end of suffering. And the word nirvana means the end of suffering. And that's what it's all about, you know. It's about discovering the truth and discovering when you are living consistent with reality, when you're being reality, when you're experiencing the way things actually are and who you actually are, there's no suffering. There's no suffering. I think that it's the way that this is talked about in the teachings is they say that if you're walking in the woods and you get a thorn stuck in your foot and you take another thorn and to pry that thorn out, right? And then you throw both thorns away. That's the way they talk about whether we're talking about a mantra or anything else. You could say the mantra is the thorn you're using to remove the other thorn. But at some point you want to throw both thorns away. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with a mantra because a mantra is a way of stabilizing your attention. It's something to put your attention on other than to let it wander or let the mind run the show, right? So anything that you can use your attention, that's all we're using the breath for, right? It's something that you can put your attention on, right? The only difference and the reason that I think a lot of the teachings use the breath is because the breath has an additional aspect to it. In the sense that when we focus attention on the breath when we're sitting in meditation, you can use that as a way of saying that awareness is aware of the body. The breath is happening in the body. Awareness is aware of the body, right? It's a way of training the mind that you're not the body, you're aware of the body. Whereas if you use a mantra, you don't necessarily get that additional component, right? Rupert Spira, for 20 years or 25 years, was practicing mantra meditation, right? I think he was practicing transcendental meditation, which uses a mantra, right? But then he went on when he discovered the direct approach, right, of just using your attention to pay attention, looking directly at its source, right? And when he got into that, the non-dual approach that was taught by Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta and so forth, right? Then he moved on from the mantra to something that was a purer form and a more direct way of getting to what is happening. I wouldn't say to you to not use the mantra, but I would say to you to see if at some point you can transition from that to simply being aware of the body. That could be a way that the person is keeping you limited. I need something to remind me. Who's saying such a thing? Awareness needs nothing to remind itself of itself. Okay? And that's why I'm saying there's nothing wrong with what you're doing, right? But see if at some point you can move beyond that and go beyond needing to be reminded of something that's always present. Yeah, see, the thing is this. The way I see it is there's nothing wrong with using that verse. That's my favorite verse.
Yeah, that's mine too.
It's actually called the Song of David, by the way.
Yes.
Right? And the thing about it is that especially if you see the truth of what it says, so you're not just repeating something, right? But you actually see the truth of what it's talking about and you're experiencing that truth. And if you see that, it's really putting you in touch with the reality of who you are. Okay, see you next time.